So today I am thrilled to be joined in the studio by Kelly Matthews-Furphy, who is the founder of the Mind Tribe UK. Katie, welcome to the studio. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, really excited to be talking to you today. And as always, a little bit of background first of all into Katie and her business. So Katie is a multi-award-winning disabled entrepreneur, educator, speaker and global mental health trainer. She founded the Mind Tribe UK, delivering mental health, resilience and mindfulness courses, as well as enterprise workshops and mentoring worldwide. The Mind Tribe UK also provides mental health first aid training, workplace mental health courses and tailored sessions for various groups. As a delivery partner for Belfast City Council's Inclusive Enterprise Pathway, they support underrepresented individuals in starting their own businesses, which is why you're in the studio today, for all of those entrepreneurs out there that need that extra help. This is what Katie does. And since 2019, Katie has trained over 12,000 people globally, making a profound impact on countless lives. So Katie, did you set out to do this, or how did it all come about?
Well, it's a bit of a journey to get to this point. I set up my first business when I graduated from Queen's, and I was 23 when I set up my first company. It was a tuition company, so teaching maths and English to children. And I've literally just wrapped up that business this week that we're recording, after 8 years of doing it. So, but I suppose I'll just get into it now. I was gonna wait for a bit, but I'll just get into it.
Just get into it. Let's go there. Just go there.
So I was diagnosed with depression when I was 17 and anxiety then when I was 22. And after I had graduated, that's when I got the diagnosis then for the anxiety, and developed PTSD, was having panic attacks, and it got quite severe. So it was during that time that I just started a new job. I just started the training in one of the banks in Belfast, and it was horrendous. Not the training or the bank, they weren't doing anything wrong. It was my experience of that, because I was so unwell.
So what was going on at the time?
Well, that's when, as I say, that's when I was having panic attacks. We'd just moved into Lurgan, and I was having to get the train down every day, and I don't know. So I'll give a trigger warning just to people that are listening, just, because I will share some things that are quite personal and can be very emotive for people. Unfortunately, in my final year of university, I was sexually assaulted when I was 22.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And it was after that then the anxiety started, and the PTSD, panic attacks, etc. So a very, difficult, challenging, emotional time where I didn't feel safe, And that was part of the contributing factors in terms of the work, because when I was going to Belfast, I was having to get the train, and I remember one particular day a man got on the train who looked like my attacker, and it wasn't him, he'd done absolutely nothing wrong, this man was just going to work, but because he looked like him, it obviously triggered something within me, and I was having a panic attack on the train then, phoning my husband, and I started off on a really light note here, didn't I? So, but so there was a lot of kind of trauma and work that needed to be done around that. But I wasn't in a place to kind of accept the help yet. I was like, no, I'm fine. If I just stay away from everyone, I'll deal with it on my own, etc. Anyway, I then decided in that time, okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to work like normally, in inverted commas, at the moment. So I was signed off then for 6 months with obviously the mental illness. And it was in that time that I then decided I'm probably going to have to work for myself here, because I need to create a life that works around my needs. So then it was actually, I'm going to sound like the worst employee ever. I went to start a new job, and I thought, right, I'll just give this a try. This one's just a wee admin job in a little company down in Benburb in the middle of nowhere. I'll just try that. And on the first day, the first coffee break, I went outside and was speaking to some of the girls that worked there. and they said I think they were Eastern European, and they were saying, oh, you've got a degree in English. We just got speaking, what's your degree in, etc. And I said, oh, English with linguistics. And they said, oh my goodness, like, why don't you tutor? Like, you should teach us. And it was literally just like a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, why am I not doing that? Like I was tutored for 12 years myself in maths, from the age of 7 to 19, all the way through from...
And you never considered that as a career for you. So what had you trained, you'd done your English?
I'd done my English with linguistics.
To do what?
No idea.
Ah, right.
That was the point. I was like, I have no idea.
I have no idea.
No.
But somebody else just provided the light bulb for you.
Yeah, it was just like everything clicked, and I thought, why am I not doing that? I love working with children. I love educating. I love talking, as you can tell, and public speaking and all that kind of stuff. Why am I not doing that? And it was literally just something clicked, and I went straight back in. I'd only been in the job about an hour and a half, and I just went and I was like, yeah, I quit. Sorry.
Okay. And maybe it was a win-win, really.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Then you just started. How did you get started?
Well, I literally, all my businesses that I have started, I've had 4 startups. I have started all of them with like less than £100. So I've never had any investment, never had any support like that. I was just like, right, this is what I need to do. But I suppose I've always been quite entrepreneurial when I think back across my life, in that I would love taking on projects. I've always tried to think outside of the box and come up with creative solutions to things. So yeah, it kind of just seemed like a natural progression then. And I thought, yeah, I think this could be for me. And then I started the tuition, and it just absolutely skyrocketed.
So who were you tutoring? Anybody that needed?
It was mostly secondary school children, mostly for sort of like GCSE maths. But then I would have had a lot coming through what was then the transfer test. Obviously now it's SEAG, but the transfer test, and then supporting particularly children with additional needs as well. So I absolutely loved it. And as I say, I've only just finished doing it. But it was the most, fantastic, rewarding experience. But it's just the way things have changed in my life in the last few years that I'm like, I need the time now to focus on other things, So I suppose that kind of leads me up to the first business. But then unfortunately, when I was 26 with the first business, I actually was declared bankrupt. So that was a big
So the first business was?
Excel and Education Tutoring School. So that is the tuition that I've still been doing. But obviously, since the bankruptcy, I'm doing it in a private
different way.
Sole trader capacity,
Okay.
rather than a limited company.
What was bankruptcy like?
Horrendous.
Yeah. So what happened? How did you get to that point?
Well, I think a lot of it happened, if I'm being honest, because I didn't ask for help.
Yeah.
So I was starting out my first business, and I had this, not chip on my shoulder, that's the wrong word, but I had this almost thing of like, I can't let people know that I'm struggling because I'll be judged, that, oh, there's this young woman, who started a business. Who does she think she is? Thinks she knows everything. Nobody had said this. This was in my head.
This was all in your head,
yeah.
as is always the case.
That's
and
it.
even there might be one or two, but who cares, really?
Exactly, you learn to brush it off in the end. But I had this in my head of like, you need to power through, you need to just keep going, not ask people for help. You should already know what you're doing. I was being quite harsh on myself as well. But obviously, as I say, I was living with mental illness too. So it would become quite irrational, the thought processes I was having. Anyway, the business was going fantastically, really expanded. I had loads of staff working for me. We'd expanded across the water. And we'd started to develop all sorts of different courses. It wasn't just maths and English then. I had a learning centre. We were doing mini mindfulness. We were doing mini medics, teaching children first aid. So it really kind of expanded. And then we started to offer different languages tuition. We had French, Spanish, Irish, obviously English, maths. And
so what, did it just get too big?
I think it probably grew too big too quickly. I didn't know what I didn't know, if that makes sense. There was so much about business that I wasn't aware of, but I didn't know that I didn't know it, if that made sense. It wasn't kind of on my radar.
That's it. And so many people who sit where you are say, well, I wasn't a business person, but
exactly.
You learn the hard way, don't you?
Yeah, that's it. Very much was the hard way. But so then it got to the point where I was just like, this isn't feasible anymore. Like, there's no money to pay people's wages. And the guilt that I carried for that, and I still carry a part of it, but I've had to try and, you know, work on that healing through counselling and things, that I did everything I could. And
you had helped and provided up until a certain point. So,
Yeah.
you know, unfortunately, things don't always work out, and sometimes you just have to walk away. But how did you free yourself from the feeling, you know, that you were to blame?
Well, it's something, it's very difficult to kind of process guilt, you know, because it's something, there's still that little bit that you carry.
Yeah.
And it was something I had to then do like specialised trauma counselling for afterwards, obviously, to discuss, you know, what happened in university, the mental illness, and looking at kind of other issues. But this was right after the bankruptcy. So that was in December 2018 that I was declared bankrupt.
Gosh.
And then came off the bankruptcy register then a year later. So I'll never forget, 14th of December. But this year, on the 14th of December, I'm finally clear from it. It'll be off my record, 6 years.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I cannot wait.
You've done the time.
That's it.
You've done the time. So take us to the Mind Tribe UK then. When did
Yes.
that start? How did it start?
Well, this was definitely the turning point. The bankruptcy kind of made me reassess and go, right, I still want to be an entrepreneur. I still want to work for myself. I love doing that. But I need to be more sensible. I need to be better with managing money. I need to learn from the mistakes, basically, if I am going to continue doing this. And I was 2 months into the bankruptcy and said, I'm starting a new business. And everybody was like, pardon?
And who are the everybody's here?
Well, family, friends, people I'd known in business, they were sort of like, okay. To be fair, the business community were more supportive because they were like, look, we've been there ourselves, or so-and-so's been there, or we've done an IVA, or we've had to do this, or, you know, everybody's like had something happen.
Perhaps you put a bit more thought into this one as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was learning, as I say, learning from the mistakes, learning the hard lessons, but doing the hard work internally as well, you know. And it was in those 2 months between the December and February that I went and got that specialised trauma counselling and processed a lot of it. So I was able to, I suppose, think more clearly and more rationally, and be in that position then where I could go, I'm actually making this decision to go back into entrepreneurship with a clearer mind and an understanding of what was actually required then as an entrepreneur. So I decided I was setting up this, and that is the Mind Tribe. So that was the one I set up, you know, that I'm
And
here
the
today.
reason, the why?
Because part of it is obviously I live with mental illness myself. So I have the personal understanding and that lived experience. But also I then went on and did different professional kind of qualifications, you know, and delivering mental health first aid on behalf of the PHA, things like that. So it was a real kind of passion for that.
Yeah. And a real
loving-
understanding.
Absolutely. And loving helping people too. You know, a lot of my family would live with mental illness as well. So I'd been around it my whole life. But yeah, really like making the impact was something that means a lot to me. You know, when I know that somebody has come away from an interaction or a course, or they've watched a video and it's made them feel that bit better, or feel maybe motivated to try something new, or even that just somebody understands where they're coming from.
Just feeling heard and seen.
Absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about your disability, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that period, that's what I always say, that was a big changing point, that bankruptcy, because it was just after that then, literally just before I started the Mind Tribe, that I was then diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis. So it's an autoimmune chronic pain condition. There's some days where I'm absolutely fine, like today recording this, feel absolutely grand. But then there's other days where I can't move my hands, you know, my fingers would swell up and they would lock. It's every joint in your body, you know, but then I've got the enthesitis and tendonitis as well. And just this morning on the recording, or before recording this, I've just found out that I've got type 2 diabetes and a blood clotting disorder as well. So all good crack.
Well, you're smiling, but obviously deep down you're thinking, what did I do to deserve all of this? I'm sure. How do you cope? I mean, obviously you've just had the new diagnoses, and you know, to receive a diabetes or a blood clotting disorder diagnosis is hugely traumatic, and I know you haven't even processed that, but
that's probably why I'm still grinning currently, because I haven't necessarily processed it.
It hasn't sunk in. But again, that perspective that you have and the way that you can connect with other people who perhaps don't seem to be heard and seen by society. Mm-hmm. Yes, we've moved on. Yes, we're supposed to be much more inclusive. But a lot of organisations and employers, well, they might be aware that they need to be more inclusive, but they don't know how. Mm-hmm. How do you think you managed to get in there? And, you know, it's obviously a time where you're providing exactly what's needed.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something actually that I can kind of speak to is the Belfast City Council contract that I was awarded there in July last year, so 2023. It was to design and develop the first council-led pathway for inclusive entrepreneurship across the whole of Northern Ireland. And I was like, this is so up my street. Like, when I saw the tender go out, I was like, I have to go for this. Like, this is everything I love.
And how brilliant that they did that. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and I thought how good of them, you know, to finally recognise, yes, we all recognise that it needs to be done, but actually going ahead and bringing something to fruition then, you know, not that just, oh yeah, it's a tick box kind of thing, to have something that's create meaningful impact.
And how many people are living with a disability in Northern Ireland? I don't know if you have that figure that shows that they would be economically inactive because of a lack of support.
There's 1 in 5 people in Northern Ireland that experience a disability, but only 2% of self-employed people experience disability.
Only 2% of self-employed people?
In Northern Ireland, yeah.
And why is that?
Well, there's so many barriers to entrepreneurship when you experience disability. You know, that could be access to funding and finance, it could be travel, it could be actual accessibility of pitching competitions, lack of visible role models and champions. There's so many things. And obviously when people have their own, obviously, individual conditions, they've got the pain management side or the condition management. There's so much, you know, that acts as barriers for people. But a lot of it, with disabled entrepreneurs is, I suppose, outside of their own conditions and things, it's other people's perceptions. Yeah. So other people thinking that maybe you're not capable or not taking you seriously, and kind of the stigma that still surrounds it.
So many disabilities are hidden as well.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you know exactly.
Well, that's mine's invisible. Yeah. You know. So
tell me about this course then. This that you set up with Belfast City Council. Who came?
Well, a real variety of people. So our target groups for the Inclusive Enterprise Pathway were people who identify as women or non-binary, people who experience disability or a long-term health condition, people from an ethnic minority or global majority background, and also people that identify as neurodivergent. So we had a real kind of mix there. But what I did first of all, what we did together was we sat down and got all the research and looked at all the sort of major barriers and the commonalities then between those sort of minority or marginalised groups, and said, right, let's put something together that actually addresses each of these barriers. So we do offer pre and early stage enterprise support. And that's a mixture of workshops. There's 20 workshops. 10 of them are the pre-enterprise, which is obviously like before you start a business.
Getting started, yeah.
So looking at things like confidence, growth mindset, unleashing creativity, role models. So addressing all of those issues and having a provision for that. And then the other 10 workshops are the early enterprise. So that's how do you actually start a business? What are the different types of businesses? You know, and actually taking them through step by step. And those are the ones that are open to any resident, basically, in Belfast City Council area. So we've had, I think off the top of my head, there's about 300 in the last year that have done the virtual workshops.
So are they all virtual? Yeah.
We do both. We do the virtual and then we do the in-house face-to-face work with organisations that work at scale with, you know, the target groups. So we've built really good relationships, you know, with different groups and organisations and
300 things. 300 is incredible. And out of those 300, how many of them came with a business idea?
Well, these ones, we don't necessarily know if that makes it, like when they come to the virtual workshops, because they can just dip in and out and choose what ones they want to come to. They don't have to disclose if they have a business idea. But the thing that was the more kind of enhanced support then was we created an enhanced mentoring program. So that first cohort ran from January to March this year, and that was 15 individuals, and all of them fell into kind of one of those categories. I hate it to sound, like tick boxy, but obviously they were the target groups. Each of them had something, whether it was they identified as a woman, whether it's they experienced disability. Off the top of my head, I know that 93% of the participants were identifying as women or non-binary. 87% of the participants had a disability or a long-term health condition. I think it's 53% of them were neurodivergent, and then 33% were from an ethnic minority or global majority background.
It's just amazing that you've been doing this, and why has it taken so long? What happened next then for them?
So I'm so proud of them, honestly. Like every single one of them that came, 100% have started a business.
Yay!
Within 6 months of completing the program.
That is incredible. Now, what support's available to them to make sure that they get what they need to keep going?
Mm-hmm. So we were able to offer them a £500 incentive business and support fund. So they were able to choose whatever they wanted to use that for to help them. That could be to address personal barriers if they wanted to do counselling, if they needed a disability support or a learning aid. Others used it to get laptops so that they could,
equipment.
Equipment. Mm-hmm. Some used it for training courses. Others used it actually for further mentoring them. So there was a real kind of mixture of what they chose to do with that money. But off the back of that, I then said, we can't just cut that. We can't just say, right, that's the end, bye.
Yeah,
here's all your support.
No. Absolutely not.
Exactly.
And then they become the role models for those coming behind.
Exactly.
So exciting.
Yep.
And I hope that it continues then.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for. I know that the contract is definitely run until the end of March 2025, but I'm not sure what will be happening beyond that. So I'm obviously hoping that there would be something we could do in terms of extending it. And what I'd really love to do is to roll it out across the other council areas across Northern Ireland. Because we've got the stats there to prove the outcomes.
And we're told that we don't have enough people for the jobs here, and there's the skills shortage. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole demographic out there that aren't being seen or heard.
Absolutely. And people as well that have so much potential, and it's just maybe something within themselves that's stopping them from taking that first step of, oh no, I couldn't see myself as an entrepreneur, or entrepreneurs don't look like me or don't sound like me.
Yeah.
And
because it's one thing to go and work for an organisation where you become an employee and then you've got that support, but you are kind of on your own. It is hard,
mm-hmm.
but to add in those extra barriers, perceived or otherwise, it could be a lonely place. So I suppose you're building a tribe.
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted that name when I first started out the business, that Mind Tribe, because I was like, it's a collective. Yeah. It's about bringing people
Covers
together.
A lot, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I wanted, something that was specific but broad, if that makes any sense at all. It could be both of them. Like it's specific in terms of it's a group, it's a gathering, but broad enough that it gives the idea of a wider collective.
Well, it's a recognisable brand as well for you. And it's getting recognised. You're getting recognised. I'm just looking at the list of awards from 2021 here. Northern Ireland Young Business Person of the Year in 21 and 22 at the Belfast Telegraph Business Awards. Northern Ireland Young Leader of the Year for the young leaders in NI. Global Startup Award. NI 30 under 30 list. You've got the F Entrepreneur in the UK's top 100 female entrepreneurs of 2022. And then last year, Northern Ireland Young Achiever of the Year 2023 at the Northern Ireland Women's Awards. What does that feel like?
Surreal. Absolutely amazing. I'm just like, what? How did this happen? But it feels lovely, obviously, when you get recognised and rewarded for the work that you are doing. I get enough of that anyway, if you like, through the work I'm doing, that personal satisfaction. But when you have your peers, I suppose, recognise the work that you're doing and judges, you know, to actually go, well, we've looked at your work and we feel as if you're worthy of that. It's so rewarding, you know, and it really does kind of put the cherry on the cake then, if you like.
And what's next for you then, Katie?
Well, good question. I'm going through a bit of a transition period again currently. Obviously, I'm coming up to, I'll be 33 in January coming. And I feel like I'm at another sort of crossroads in my life where we're potentially hoping, you know, to start a family. And I'm thinking then, well, what am I going to do business-wise? So it's all a bit up in the air at the moment, if I'm being honest.
And managing your health as well.
Absolutely. And that's something that is at the forefront of everything I do now, because, you know, living with the disability and other health conditions, it's a fine balance between overworking and actually needing to practice self-care and practice what I preach as well.
I know.
You know?
Isn't it amazing? You can tell everybody other things, but you don't listen yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
So what is it like being a female entrepreneur with a disability? You know, just help us understand, those who don't understand, and tell us what is needed. Yeah,
so it is challenging, I'm not going to lie, you know, and say it's all rainbows and butterflies, because it's not. It is hard. And there are days when you have to reschedule things. You know, we even had to reschedule this podcast recording.
Well, that was car trouble.
That was car trouble, thankfully. Yeah. But there's always something, you know, like, oh, I need to reschedule this, or I've got a hospital appointment then, I need to do X, Y, Z. When you're trying to manage pain, that is probably the hardest part of it, because it's invisible again. So if I had a broken leg, people can physically see, oh, you've got a broken leg, that's why you're sore. But when they can't see it, you know, you get the sort of...
As a sole trader or an entrepreneur with your broken leg, I mean, you're kind of, unless you've got good insurance, you have to keep going, don't you? Mm-hmm.
Well, that's it. That's me, you know, being self-employed, unfortunately, the nature of the beast, if you like, that we don't get sick pay, we don't get maternity pay, we don't get holiday pay. You know, you have to factor that in. But I think that's what is kind of needed, is those wider, more accessible, inclusive supports that are actually specifically targeted and designed for people, whether it is, you know, a disability, whether it's for people that identify as women or non-binary, people that experience mental illness, you know, whatever it is, there needs to be those dedicated, tailored supports. And it needs to be not just that tick box, you know, and that's what, just to reference earlier, I forgot to mention that, you know, not leaving them and just saying, right, you're finished now. So what we've done is we've set up an alumni network so that they're going to come through to keep them connected with each other. They've got their inclusive entrepreneurship community, but also the next cohort that we're starting in October, we'll have them then as role models, and we're going to be doing an event then where they can meet them and talk about their experiences. And then we'll have a third cohort that will go through January to March next year. So there'll be 45 people altogether that will have been through the programme by the end of it. And they'll have that support then with each other, people that look like them, sound like them, have experienced similar things, overcome similar barriers, and provide that inspiration and support for each other then.
That is incredible. Do you have pinch yourself moments?
I do. I think, how on earth did this happen? How did I get so lucky, though, to like be in this role? Because it is everything I love. Everything I love put into one. It was meant for you. I feel like that. I feel like when I saw it, I was like, that's mine.
Everything. And, you know, when you manifested and it came to you. But I'm just thinking of those other people, and I wish I could actually have them in the studio now, because I would love to really understand the difference that you've made to people's lives and livelihoods and opportunities and futures. It's pretty special.
Thank you very much. They'd be more than happy, I'm sure, to share. A lot of them are like me, talkers. So.
And, you know, are there any exciting businesses there among that first cohort?
Yeah, there's a real kind of variety of businesses. So you've got some that are like freelance artists. You've got people that are setting up or have set up now. I'm talking about as if they haven't done it. They have personal training businesses. You've got people that have set up supports around kind of like gut health. You've got ones that are, what was the other one I was thinking of? Yeah, a tour guiding.
Brilliant.
But it's specifically with reference to the troubles from a feminist perspective or like a female perspective.
Right, so really eclectic mix there, and all different types of businesses.
Very much so.
And I'm sure they're living their dream. They're getting to pursue their dream, and that, I think, deserves a lot of congratulations, Katie.
Thank you.
So, you've got a lot of things to consider over the next while, but I'm sure that there is much, much more to come from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that I know I said I don't know where I'm going, but like I want to roll out, as I say, the inclusive entrepreneurship program across the rest of Northern Ireland and potentially wider than. Obviously keep delivering the mental health first aid training. I keep doing my keynote talks and conferences and workshops, all things like that.
You're also a real voice for people with a disability and with a mental illness. I know you're on the all-party parliamentary group for disability. How important is that for you?
Oh, really important, because that's at a UK level, and that's working with government to inform like policy change and things like that. So it used to be the APPG for inclusive entrepreneurship, but they changed things and things had to happen when the government changed. So now it's the APPG for disability.
Okay.
But it's a really great collective and kind of working group where people come together that do experience all different types of disabilities and health conditions, and we help to advise and inform on policy and what needs to happen, not only in terms of workplaces but entrepreneurship as well. And that's the part that obviously I'm really, really passionate about.
Yeah, we definitely need the lobbying to continue. Lots of things are changing at the minute, lots of upheaval, I suppose, but lots of opportunities.
Absolutely. And I think that's the entrepreneurial mindset, is to take it and go, okay, yes, there are challenges, but these are opportunities for us. And that's the same way I tried to frame it in the programme for people, is that, yes, we do have additional barriers. Yes, we do experience different challenges, but it doesn't define us. It doesn't mean that we can't find creative solutions and ways around it to overcome those and still be successful and still create the life that you want to live.
Is it a better world now for people with a disability?
I think, yes, in some circumstances, but there's also the intersectionality lens that you have to look through, because some people that come on the programme or, in society, they're not just going to fall nicely into the one little tick box and say, that's my group, I identify as a woman. They may be identifying as a woman, but also experiencing disability and from an ethnic minority or global majority background. So it's those interweaving, I suppose, or layering of the barriers as well that we need to be aware of for people.
So many individuals experiencing individual things, but that commonality just isn't, the way we need to think going forward. You have achieved so much. You're still so very young as well, so that's why I keep thinking there's so many exciting things next for the Mind Tribe and indeed for you. But what's the biggest lesson you've learned in being a businesswoman?
Two things, I suppose, two lessons. One is stay true to yourself and your values. Because I've been told so many times over the years, you shouldn't be speaking about mental illness, you shouldn't talk about your disability, you shouldn't talk about being assaulted, you shouldn't be saying any of that in public. People are going to judge you, they're going to judge your business. And I'm like, well, they can judge me if they want, but it's part of my experience, it's who I am. Like, you can't take that away from me, kind of thing, and if I wanted to speak about it and if I'm comfortable speaking about it, surely that's the main thing, and
it's showing that vulnerability as well, which seems to, help others come forward. So you are reaching who you need to reach.
Well, there's real power, I think, in making yourself voluntarily vulnerable. Like even now, I'm making myself voluntarily vulnerable because I'm choosing to open up about this. But there's power in that because it's my choice. I'm choosing to do that, So I'd say, that's one of the big ones is obviously staying true to yourself, your values, what you believe in. But the second part of that is ask for help, because there was plenty of times, as we've discussed, where I didn't and I suffered because of it. So asking for help and not being afraid of people's judgment. You know, other people's opinions is what holds us back so much.
Completely.
Rather than just saying, well, actually, this is something that I want to do.
So who has your back, Katie?
Oh, so many people. My husband is fabulous. He's an entrepreneur as well. I haven't got my ring on though, so sorry, Aaron. But I never wear it.
He knows you love him.
Exactly. He's been putting up with me for 10 years, so he knows.
And where did you two meet?
We met at university.
Right.
So he's from here.
So did you go to uni in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, Queen's.
Right, okay. So
and
you
he
came over from England and fell in love and stayed.
That's it. Yep. Yeah. He went at Ulster and I was at Queen's, so love across the divide. So
and who else helps you? I mean, he obviously helps you with lots of things, but in the business world, who's your mentor? Who's got your back?
Yeah, in the business world, there are some absolutely incredible people that have helped me so much. Tina McKenzie has been absolutely incredible. She's such a role model for me, and I'm pleased that I can call her a friend as well.
We're going to have to get her on this podcast. You're the second person to mention Tina McKenzie on this podcast. So Tina, if you're listening, we'd like to have you in the studio, please.
She's incredible. She's such a role model for female entrepreneurs, or for any entrepreneur.
She gives so much too.
That's it, and that's why I love having her around, because not only, it's not just a case of taking from her, but she wants to help. She wants to see you do well. And it was her that when I was going through the bankruptcy, she was the person that said to me, this is who you need to speak to. You will come back from this. I believe in you, basically, that you're meant to be an entrepreneur and you can succeed. It's just a hard lesson you need to learn from.
Nice to hear.
She's phenomenal. And then there's other role models in terms of people like Vivian McKinnon, who is the founder of Hydroease. She's a really incredible person as well. You've got people like Declan Barry. Just surrounded by amazing people. Yeah.
Good people, that's it. And stop looking for the one person who says the negative thing and holding on to that.
That's it.
Katie, the purpose of this podcast is to inspire existing business owners and ambitious entrepreneurs to grow their business by offering an insight into the success of businesses such as the Mind Tribe UK and others. What advice would you give to people, though, who may have that business idea but are unsure as to whether the risk is worth taking, or they just don't know how to begin?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a few things that you can do in terms of yourself, I suppose, deciding if it's right for you, is sitting down and almost looking at it from a logical perspective and going, right, what do I need to be making financially to be comfortable? Is that something that I can achieve with this business idea? Is it something I think is feasible? Is it something I'm passionate about that I can do every day? Do I have the kind of support network around me? Some people may not have that support network currently, but these are all things that can be found or discovered, You can start by going to your local enterprise agency. You can speak to councils. You've got LinkedIn, which is a great resource as well. That's one of the big things that helped me with my business was actually LinkedIn. So utilising that, getting your name out there, attending maybe some free business events virtually or in person to kind of get a feel for the community and what support is out there. But you've also got things like even listening to podcasts as well to gather that information. And
this one's good.
Absolutely, I would say so. But I think, there is a lot out there. But looking at the kind of free things that are out there too, obviously you've got things like Go Succeed as well, which My Pathway feeds into that.
Yeah.
Where, obviously that's free as well. And it's all across all council areas in Northern Ireland. So there is a lot that kind of is out there. But it's almost like, where do you start? And I know that can be quite intimidating.
Just that conversation with someone to point you in the right direction. It's about getting started.
That's it. And not worrying, if somebody says, oh, no, I wouldn't be too sure about that, or I wouldn't know who to speak to. That's okay. Doesn't mean you can't ask somebody else,
Yeah.
So I think, those are sort of like the main ways that you can get started.
Brilliant advice. And always just keep going. There's, for every door that closes, another will open. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today. And I wish you every success and good health for the future. But thank you for continuing to inspire others. And I'd love to get you back in 5 years' time and just see how much you've achieved. And yeah, we'll get all of those other businesses back in the studio as well.
Absolutely.
Thank
you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
So thank you to Katie for joining me today, and thank you for tuning in. Do join me again for the next episode when in the studio I'll have Anne Matthews from Belfast Chiropractic Clinic and Complementary Therapies, and that'll be a really good episode of the Public Eye podcast. This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team, using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.